The diplomatic vessel Harmony drifted silently through space toward the meeting point. Captain Kim Hanna stood on the bridge, watching the stars through the main viewport. Her dark hair was pulled back in regulation style, and her uniform bore the symbols of Earth's first interstellar diplomatic mission. "Contact in 30 minutes, Captain," reported Commander Park Miho from a station. The tactical officer's voice was steady, but Hannah could hear the tension underneath. Everyone was nervous. This was humanity's first meeting with aliens. Dr. Lee Daeho adjusted his recording equipment one more time. As the mission's chief scientist, he would document everything about these beings called the Zephyrians. His hand shook slightly as he checked his instruments. "They're here," whispered Lieutenant Choi Samin from the sensor station. Space itself seemed to bend and twist. Then the alien ships appeared like magic. They looked nothing like human vessels. The Zephyrian ships were made of what appeared to be living crystal. They gleamed and sparkled, bending starlight around their hulls in impossible ways. Beautiful patterns of light danced across their surfaces. "My God," breathed Park Miho. "They're gorgeous." Captain Hanna nodded slowly. The alien ships were works of art floating in space. They made human vessels look like crude metal boxes by comparison. The largest alien ship moved closer to the Harmony. A docking tube extended from its crystalline hull, connecting to the human vessel with perfect precision. The technology was so advanced it seemed like magic. "Remember," Captain Hanna told her crew, "we represent all of humanity today. Stay calm and observe everything." The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Ambassador Thylex entered the human ship. Hannah had seen pictures, but meeting the alien in person was overwhelming. Thylex stood nearly 8 feet tall, with pale blue skin that glowed with shifting patterns of light. He had 4 arms instead of 2, and his face was long and elegant with large, dark eyes. His movements were graceful like a dancer. Behind him came other aliens from different species. One looked like a walking tree with silver bark. Another had 6 legs and fur that changed colors. A third floated in the air, surrounded by a shimmering energy field. "Greetings, young humans," Thylex said. His voice was musical, with strange harmonics that made the words seem to sing. "We are representatives of the Zephyrian Confederation. We have watched your species with great interest." Captain Hanna bowed politely. "Welcome aboard the Harmony. I am Captain Kim Hanna, speaking for the people of Earth." Thylex smiled, showing teeth that sparkled like diamonds. "How quaint. Shall we begin with a small demonstration of our capabilities? We believe in showing rather than telling." The aliens moved to the Harmony S cargo bay, where they had brought several devices. Dr. Lee Daeho watched carefully as they began their show. The first device looked like a small metal cube. Thylex activated it with a touch, and suddenly pieces of space debris began floating in the air, moving in complex patterns. The gravity manipulator was creating art from floating rocks and metal scraps. "Impressive," Dr. Lee said, taking detailed readings. But he frowned at his instruments. The technology was advanced, but it seemed old somehow. The second demonstration was even more spectacular. Another alien-activated device that shot beams of light at an asteroid chunk. The rock began to change, its surface becoming smooth and polished. Within minutes, it had transformed into a beautiful sculpture. "Matter conversion," Thylex explained casually. "We can reshape any material into any form we desire." The humans watched in amazement. Park Miho leaned over to Captain Hanna. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours," he whispered. For the final demonstration, one of the tree-like aliens deliberately cut off one of its own branches. Green sap flowed from a wound. Then another alien used a small healing device on the injury. The branch grew back in seconds, healthy and strong. "Biological regeneration," Thylex said. "We have conquered death itself." Throughout the demonstrations, Hannah noticed the aliens whispering among themselves. They weren't trying to hide their conversations from the humans. "Look how they stare," one alien said to another, "like primitive children seeing fire for the first time." "Their ship is so crude," another replied. "Chemical rockets and metal plating. How do they even survive in space?" "They barely deserve the title of spacefaring species," a third added with amusement. Captain Hannah kept her face neutral, but her jaw tightened slightly. The universal translator was working perfectly. She understood every insulting word. After the demonstrations, Ambassador Thylex addressed the humans with a grand gesture of his 4 arms. "We are impressed by your species' potential," he announced. "Therefore, the Confederation extends a generous offer. We invite humanity to join our great alliance as junior partners." Dr. Lee looked up from his readings. "What would that involve?" Thylex's smile grew wider. "Simple. Your species would provide raw materials from your worlds. Basic labor for simple tasks. In return, we would share some of our technology and provide protection from the dangers of space." The offer sounded generous, but something in Thylex's tone suggested it wasn't really a request. "This is a great honor," Captain Hannah said carefully. "Such an important decision requires consultation with our government." "Of course," Thylex replied, though his eyes showed a flash of annoyance. "But do not take too long. The galaxy can be very dangerous for unprotected species." The meeting ended with polite farewells, but the threat lingered in the air like smoke. 3 weeks later, Captain Kim Hannah found herself aboard an alien vessel unlike anything humans had ever imagined. The Zephyrian ship Crystal Dawn was alive in ways that defied understanding. The corridors breathed, adjusting temperature and humidity as the humans walked through them. The walls showed real-time views of distant stars and nebulae, as if the ship itself was transparent. "This is incredible," whispered Dr. Lee Deo, running his hand along a wall that felt warm and smooth like living skin. His instruments recorded everything, but the readings made little sense. The ship seemed to be grown rather than built. Commander Park Miho stayed close to Captain Hannah as they followed Ambassador Thylex through the vessel. Other aliens moved through the corridors with fluid grace. Some floated instead of walking. Others had tentacles instead of legs. All of them stared at the humans with barely hidden amusement. Primitive visitors always react this way. One alien commented to another as they passed. So amazed by basic biotechnology. Lieutenant Choi Sumin kept her expression neutral, while her hidden recording devices captured everything. The aliens were impressive, but their arrogance was showing more clearly now. "Behold," Ambassador Thylex announced as they reached the observation deck. "Ethros Prime, heart of our great confederation." The view that greeted them was breathtaking. Floating cities hung in space around massive gas giants like jeweled necklaces. Each city was different, shaped by the species that built it. Some looked like growing coral reefs. Others resembled giant flowers blooming in the void. "How many people live here?" asked Dr. Lee, trying to count the countless structures. "Billions across 12 worlds and hundreds of stations," Thylex replied proudly, "all living in perfect harmony under Confederation guidance." The word guidance carried weight that made Captain Hannah uncomfortable. As their tour continued, they visited one of the floating cities. The architecture was stunning, but felt ancient. The buildings had the same designs repeated over and over, as if no one had created anything new in centuries. "How old are these structures?" Commander Park asked. "This particular city is only 800 years old," Thylex said. "We rebuilt it after the previous inhabitants disagreed with Confederation policy." The casual way he mentioned destruction made the humans exchange glances. They were shown the Dyson collectors next, massive crystalline structures that harvested energy from the system's sun. Bioengineered creatures the size of space stations performed maintenance on the collectors. The creatures moved with purpose, but their eyes seemed empty, as if they had no will of their own. "Are those beings intelligent?" Dr. Lee asked, watching a creature repair a damaged collector. "They serve their purpose," Thylex replied dismissively. "Intelligence is not required for simple tasks." During their visit to the military shipyards, Lieutenant Choi noticed something troubling. The Zephyrian warships were undeniably beautiful, with hulls that sparkled like gems and weapons that created rainbow patterns when fired. But their designs prioritized appearance over function. The armor looked thin and decorative. The weapons seemed designed more for show than for actual combat. The power systems were elegant, but had no backup redundancies that she could see. "Your warships are works of art," she commented carefully. "Indeed," Thylex preened. We believe that war itself should be beautiful. Our enemies usually surrender when they see the magnificence of our fleets. That evening, the humans were invited to a grand feast with representatives from all 12 Confederation species. The dining hall was enormous, with tables floating at different levels throughout the space. The food was exotic and delicious, though some dishes moved on their own. As the meal progressed, the aliens became more talkative. Commander Ojaiwan, who had joined them from the diplomatic staff, listened carefully to their conversations. The Kelthari were such fierce warriors before joining us, one alien said with amusement. Now they clean our waste recycling centers quite efficiently. Remember the Nexari? Another laughed. They thought their plasma cannons could threaten us. Now they grow food in our agricultural domes. Dr. Lee leaned closer to Captain Hannah. Every species they mention is described in past tense, he whispered, as if their original cultures no longer exist. The conversation turned to recent events in the galaxy. Pirates have been very active lately. Thylex mentioned casually while eating something that looked like glowing fruit. Just last month, an unprotected colony in the Vega system was completely destroyed. Such a tragedy. What happened? Captain Hannah asked. Raiders, most likely. Or perhaps stellar phenomena. Space can be so dangerous for species without proper protection. Thylex's tone was sympathetic, but his eyes were cold. The survivors begged to join our confederation afterward. Another alien nodded sadly. The same thing happened to 3 other independent colonies this year. Pirates seemed to target unprotected worlds specifically. The implications were clear. Join the confederation or face mysterious disasters. As the evening wound down, Ambassador Thylex stood to address the humans directly. We hope this tour has shown you the benefits of Confederation membership, he said, his 4 arms spread wide. Your species has such potential. It would be unfortunate if that potential was wasted. Wasted how? Commander Park asked. Accidents happen to isolated species. Thylex replied with false sadness. Equipment failures. Natural disasters. Hostile encounters. The galaxy is full of dangers for those who face them alone. Captain Hannah stood slowly. We appreciate your hospitality and your generous offer. Our government will give it the careful consideration it deserves. Thylex's smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course, but please do not take too long. Recent events suggest that independence can be hazardous to one's health. The threat was no longer subtle. As the humans returned to their quarters, they knew war was coming. The emergency session had been going for 18 hours straight. Admiral Yoon Taeyum stood at the head of the war room, his face grim as he studied the holographic displays showing Zephyrian fleet movements across known space. Around the table sat the most important military leaders and government officials on Earth. They're not just bullies, Admiral Yoon said, slamming his fist on the table. They're systematic predators. Look at this pattern. The holographic display changed to show a timeline stretching back 1,000 years. Red dots marked the locations of species that had refused Zephyrian protection. One by one, each red turned black as disasters struck their worlds. 17 different species said no to the Confederation, continued the Admiral. All of them suffered mysterious catastrophes within 50 years. Pirate attacks that destroyed entire fleets. Stellar phenomena that wiped out colonies. Plagues that killed billions. Dr. Lee Daeho, who had returned from the alien tour pale and shaken, added his technical analysis. Their technology is impressive but stagnant. They've been using the same basic designs for centuries. They win through intimidation, not innovation. Secretary of Defense Han Jiyoung pulled up intelligence reports on her personal tablet. The pattern is always the same. First comes a generous offer of protection. If refused, accidents begin happening. Small at first, a mining station explodes, a trade ship disappears. Then bigger disasters strike. She highlighted several case studies. The Kelthari were proud warriors with advanced weapons. After joining the Confederation, they became janitors and construction workers. Their military was disbanded for their own safety. The Nexari had powerful plasma technology. Now they farmed food for their alien masters. Captain Kim Hannah spoke quietly from her seat. During our tour, I watched how they treated their member species. The bioengineered creatures working on their solar collectors. Those were once intelligent beings. They've been changed into living tools. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They expect submission because they've never faced real resistance, Captain Kim continued. Every species they've encountered was either primitive or pacified through fear. They don't know how to fight a war against equals. Commander Park Miho, who had been analyzing Zephyrian military tactics, stood up. Their warships are designed for intimidation ceremonies, not actual combat. Beautiful but fragile. Their weapon systems prioritize visual spectacle over destructive power. They've forgotten what real warfare looks like. Admiral Yu nodded grimly. Which brings us to our decision. We can surrender now and hope they're merciful. Or we can show them why humans spent 3 centuries fighting each other before we reached the stars. The vote was unanimous. Protocol 7 was authorized under emergency powers dating back to the Alpha Centauri War. Within hours, the order went out across the solar system. Shipyards that had been idle for decades suddenly blazed with activity. On Mars, the great weapons factories that had been converted to civilian use began retooling for war production. In the asteroid belt, mining operations expanded frantically to provide raw materials. Commander Lim Kyung-go received his orders at the Titan Naval Base. The massive facility, built into the moon's ice surface, had been maintaining the mothballed dreadnought fleet for 50 years. Now those sleeping giants would wake. Reactivate everything, he told his staff. The old war dogs, the experimental ships, even the prison hulks. If it can mount a weapon and fly, we need it operational. Hidden bases throughout the Kuiper Belt came online. Automated defense platforms that had been disguised as asteroids for decades began charging their weapon systems. The sole defense grid, humanity's ultimate insurance policy, was awakening. Major Yu Seojun commanded one of the asteroid forts, built inside a rock so ordinary that alien sensors would dismiss it as space debris. His facility housed enough nuclear missiles to destroy a small fleet. How long since the last war games? He asked the second-in-command. 15 years, sir, but the crew remembers their training. You nodded. Good, because this won't be a game. 3 weeks later, Captain Kim Hanna returned to the neutral meeting station to deliver humanity's answer. Ambassador Thylex was waiting in the same elegant conference room where they had first met. Have your leaders reached the obvious conclusion? Thylex asked, his forearms spread in what he probably thought was a welcoming gesture. They have, Captain Kim replied calmly. Humanity respectfully declines your offer of protection. For a moment, Thylex's elegant composure cracked. His bioluminescent patterns flickered with what might have been anger or surprise. I'm sorry to hear that, he said, though his tone suggested he wasn't sorry at all. The galaxy has been particularly dangerous lately. Just yesterday, we received reports of pirate activity near your outer colonies. Such a tragic coincidence. Captain Kim's expression didn't change. We're aware of the attacks on our mining stations. Your proxies aren't as subtle as you think. Thylex's mask dropped completely. The diplomat was gone, replaced by something cold and predatory. Unprotected species rarely survive long in this dangerous galaxy, he said, each word carefully measured. Equipment failures are so common among primitive civilizations. Reactor explosions, navigation errors that send ships into suns, asteroid impacts that could have been prevented with proper early warning systems. Is that a threat, Ambassador? Merely an observation about the hazards of independence. Thylex stood, his tall frame looming over the human captain. I do hope your species reconsiders before it's too late. As the alien delegation prepared to leave, Thylex delivered one final warning. Change your mind quickly, Captain Kim. My government's patience has limits, and accidents can happen so easily to stubborn species. The war was no longer coming. It was here. 6 months had passed since humanity's refusal. The Zephyrian Confederation had grown tired of subtle threats and mysterious accidents. It was time for a proper demonstration of power. Commander Lim Kyung-go watched his sensor displays from a bridge of the patrol ship Guardian. His vessel floated near Pluto's orbit, one of 12 human ships positioned at the edge of the solar system. They looked tiny against a vast emptiness of space. Hyperspace distortions detected, reported Ensign Namura from her station. Multiple contacts incoming. Space began to twist and bend like heated metal. Then the Zephyrian Armada emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 200 crystalline warships materialized in a display that took Lim's breath away. Each alien vessel was a masterpiece. Their hulls caught and bent starlight into rainbow patterns. Some ships looked like floating cathedrals made of living crystal. Others resembled enormous flowers blooming in the void. The entire fleet moved together like a school of luminous fish. "Beautiful," whispered Lieutenant Park Seonho from the weapons station. "Almost too beautiful to shoot at. Beauty won't save them if they fire first," Lim replied grimly. The Zephyrian flagship was the largest vessel any human had ever seen. It looked like a palace carved from a single enormous gem, with spires and towers that gleamed with inner light. Admiral Thylex commanded from its bridge, expecting the show of overwhelming force to end human resistance immediately. "Open communications to the primitive fleet," Thylex ordered his crew. He appeared on screens throughout the human vessels, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of false mercy. "People of Earth," his musical voice rang across the void, "behold the true power of Confederation. Your outer colonies have already felt our displeasure at your foolish refusal. Mining Station 7, Colonial Outpost Kepler, Research Base Europa, all gone, consumed by unfortunate accidents." Commander Lim clenched his fists. Those accidents had killed 3,000 humans, men and women who had been building humanity's future among the stars. "Surrender now," Thylex continued, "and we will be merciful. Your species will find useful work serving the Confederation. Resist, and you'll share the fate of all who defy us." Admiral Park Hyun-soo, commanding the heavy cruiser Indomitable, opened a response channel. His weathered face filled the alien screens, showing no fear despite the massive fleet bearing down on them. "This is Admiral Park of the United Earth Defense Force," he said calmly. "You're ordered to leave the system immediately. You have 10 minutes to comply." Alien laughter echoed across all frequencies. To the Zephyrians, 12 crewed human vessels challenging 200 advanced warships was beyond ridiculous. It was pathetically suicidal. 10 minutes. Thylex chuckled, his bioluminescent patterns flickering with amusement. "You amuse us, Admiral. Very well. We will give you 10 minutes to reconsider before we disable your primitive ships." The Zephyrian fleet began moving forward in their traditional attack formation. It was more like a ceremonial parade than a military maneuver. The beautiful ships arranged themselves in artistic patterns, their weapons charging with spectacular displays of colored energy. Captain Song Min-jae, aboard the destroyer Defiance, watched the alien approach through his tactical display. "They fight like they're putting on a show," he reported to Fleet Command. "No defensive formations, no screening elements. They're treating this like a ceremony." Major Kwon Min-ji floated in the command center of Defense Platform Fortress 7, hidden inside what looked like an ordinary asteroid. Her facility was one of hundreds scattered throughout the solar system, all disguised as space debris. "Seoul Defense Grid reports all stations ready," she announced on the encrypted command frequency. "Weapons charged. Targeting solutions locked." The 10 minutes passed slowly. Thylex used the time to broadcast threats and demands of Earth itself, expecting panic surrender messages from human leadership. Instead, he received silence. "Your time is up," he finally announced. "Disable their engines. Leave them alive to serve as an example to other stubborn species." The Zephyrian fleet opened fire. Rainbow beams of energy lanced across space toward the human vessels. The weapons were beautiful to watch, creating spectacular light shows as they charged and fired. The aliens had designed them more for intimidation and destruction, expecting most enemies to surrender rather than fight. The energy beam struck the lead human ship, Commander Lim's Guardian. The alien crew watched expectantly, waiting for the primitive vessel to explode or lose power. Instead, the ugly gray ship shrugged off the attack, like it was nothing more than colored lights. Its angular armor plating, designed by engineers who understood real warfare, absorbed, and deflected the Zephyrian weapons with casual efficiency. "Impossible!" breathed Thylex, staring at his weapon displays. "Nothing can withstand Confederation firepower." Then Admiral Park's voice came across all frequencies, calm and deadly. "Sol Defense Grid, you are authorized to engage." Fire. Space erupted. What the aliens had assumed were 12 patrol vessels revealed their true nature. They weren't a patrol fleet. They were the bait. Thousands of hidden weapons platforms emerged from asteroid camouflage. Moon bases opened like deadly flowers, revealing massive gun emplacements. Ships that had been disguised as space debris suddenly blazed with engine fire and weapon signatures. The human vessels themselves began moving with predatory coordination that spoke of centuries of warfare. Their ugly, practical designs suddenly made sense. They were built by a species that had spent 300 years fighting itself, learning how to kill efficiently. Commander Lim smiled grimly as his ship's railguns locked onto the nearest Zephyrian cruiser. "Welcome to human space," he said, and pulled the trigger. The war had begun. The first Zephyrian energy beam struck Commander Lim's ship and simply stopped. The rainbow-colored weapon that had destroyed 1,000 primitive civilizations met human armor, designed to survive nuclear fire. The beam scattered harmlessly across the Guardian's angular hull plating. For a moment, space was silent. Then hell broke loose. Thousands of asteroid-sized objects throughout the solar system suddenly blazed with weapon fire. What the Zephyrians had dismissed as space debris revealed itself as the most comprehensive defense network in galactic history. Hidden gun platforms, disguised battle stations, and camouflaged missile batteries opened fire simultaneously. Major Yuseo Jun watched his targeting computer from inside asteroid base Charlie 7. His facility had been carved from solid rock and hidden for 50 years, waiting for this moment. Through his periscope, he could see the beautiful Zephyrian fleet beginning to realize their terrible mistake. "Target locked," reported his gunner. "Zephyrian heavy cruiser, bearing 270. "Fire," you ordered. The railgun shot a tungsten projectile at 30% the speed of light. The Zephyrian ship's crystalline armor, designed to deflect energy weapons and impress primitive species, shattered like glass. The cruiser broke apart in a shower of sparkling fragments. Admiral Thylex stared at his tactical display in growing horror. Red warning lights flashed across his flagship's bridge as damage reports flooded in. His beautiful fleet was dying. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "These are primitives. They use chemical rockets." Before anyone could answer, something slammed into his flagship's shields with the force of a small moon. The stellar crown shuddered and groaned as its defenses tried to absorb the impact. Captain Song Min-jae had fired a spread of nuclear torpedoes from his destroyer Defiance. Each warhead carried the destructive power of a small star, designed to crack open fortified asteroid bases during the Belt Wars. "Direct hit on the flagship," he reported to Fleet Command. "Their shields are failing." The Zephyrians tried to retreat into their traditional defensive formations, but they had never fought an enemy that understood three-dimensional warfare. Human ships moved through space like predators, using gravity wells and planetary shadows for cover. Commander Go Yunji piloted her assault frigate Fury in a slingshot maneuver around Jupiter. The giant planet's gravity accelerated her ship to incredible speed while hiding her approach from Zephyrian sensors. She emerged behind a squadron of alien destroyers like a shark attacking from below. "Surprise!" she muttered, launching a full spread of kinetic missiles. The Zephyrian ships had no chance to dodge. Their elegant formations were designed for ceremonial combat, not the brutal reality of modern warfare. Go's missiles tore through their rear armor, sending 3 destroyers tumbling out of control. Lieutenant Colonel Quan Minji coordinated the defense grid from her command bunker on Ceres. Her screen showed the battle unfolding across the entire solar system. The aliens were trying to break through human lines through sheer numbers, but they were learning that humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of killing. "Sector 7, concentrate fire on that battleship," she ordered. All stations switched to armor-piercing rounds. The Zephyrian battleship Crystal Heart was a magnificent vessel, its hull carved from a single enormous gem. It had served as the flagship for a dozen conquest campaigns. but had never faced weapons designed by humans who had fought the bloodiest war in galactic history. Dozens of railgun rounds struck the battleship simultaneously. Each projectile hit with the kinetic energy of a small asteroid. The beautiful crystalline armor cracked and split, revealing the fragile internal structure beneath. Admiral Thylex watched his proud fleet being systematically destroyed by creatures he had dismissed as barely civilized. His tactical officer, a being with 6 arms and compound eyes, turned in with obvious panic. "Admiral, we must retreat. We've lost 60% of our fleet." "Impossible," Thylex snarled. "These are primitives. They shouldn't even have spaceflight." But the evidence was undeniable. Around them, the pride of the Confederation was being torn apart by weapons they had never imagined. The humans fought like devils, with a coordination and ferocity that spoke of endless practice in the art of war. Major Park Do-Hyun commanded the stealth destroyer Shadow, one of the experimental vessels that had been kept secret for decades. His ship was invisible to most sensors, a ghost that struck without warning and vanished before retaliation could come. Target the command ship, he ordered his crew, "Let's end this." The Shadow materialized directly above Thylex's flagship, like a specter of death. Its main gun, a prototype particle beam, fired at point-blank range. The weapon punched through the Stellar Crown shields and armor like they were made of paper. Admiral Thylex felt his flagship dying around him. Emergency lights flashed as atmosphere vented into space. His beautiful command bridge, carved from living crystal, began to crack and crumble. "Surrender!" he broadcast on all frequencies. "We surrender." The human weapons fire ceased as suddenly as it had begun. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the battle had been. Admiral Park Hyunsu's voice came across the communication channels, cold and final. "This is Admiral Park of the United Earth Defense Force. To any surviving Zephyrian vessels, you are ordered to collect your dead and leave the system immediately. Any ship that returns will be destroyed without warning." As rescue shuttles moved to collect survivors from crippled alien vessels, Captain Kim Hanna opened a channel to Confederation homeworlds. "This is Captain Kim Hanna, speaking for humanity. We declined your protection. We also decline to conquer you. Leave us alone, and we'll do the same for you. This is our only warning. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again.